Maybe this guy. Well, I'm lucky to say I don't think I have any of those, so I don't need to ask my doctor. But maybe I should. They say it's a miracle. Night, Julian Snow. Yeah, it says to ask your doctor, so maybe I should, regardless of whether I have all those things. Yeah, ask your doctor. I'm sure they'll prescribe you something, maybe a few somethings. Juliet Snow. All right. It's my Baltimore accent. uh, I might clarify this little area here. Whoop, 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 whoop. If you're from Baltimore, you're supposed to say night, hun. Yeah. Down the ocean, hun. And wooder. My mom says wooder. Highlandtown accent. All right. I think he looks pretty good. Oh, you know what? I should burn my... Yes, this was $3. I should burn my, Oh, I have labels for the back, but maybe I should burn it again. I need a Scotty peeler. And those are out in the shed. I'll get this off officially at some point. But maybe I should burn in like 2024 or something. Let me switch to my other. I did have a little thing that I could use to remove them, and I gotta find all my... So I could remove it without waiting for it to get cool. Okay, it's fine. Pop. All right. I was going to post the common side effects of Rinvoq, but I hit the character limit. Yeah, it's a shit ton of them. Like, how did it even get FDA approval? Night, hun. There you go. Actually, while that's heating up, I'll get one of my stickers. Boop. Probably not going to be able to see it very well because of the same color as the background, but that's all right. There we go. I grew up in Maryland and know that Baltimore. Oh, nice. Where did you grow up? I was born in Baltimore, in Union Memorial. I moved to South Florida when I was 2, but yeah, you can't even see it. It's there though. Columbia. Oh, nice. I lived in Catonsville for a summer with my uncle, and worked in Columbia as a veterinary assistant for a summer in between vet school years. Awesome. Yeah, there's a place in Bowley's Quarters called Miami Beach on the Bay. It's now owned by the state, but that's where my mom grew up. Her family owned that beach for a long time, many decades actually, until they, I guess, sold it. But that's where she grew up, Miami Beach on the Bay, Bowley's Quarters. You know what they say, once you go Florida, you never go back. I actually did go back. I moved back to Baltimore my first year out of vet school. And let me burn a number in here. And just didn't really care for it as much. 2024. I'll put a 2 here. People are not super friendly, not unfriendly in Baltimore. They're just not super friendly. They're just there. And we lived in Timonium, which is somewhat hoity-toity. And there weren't very many good restaurants that we could find. Either had really good food and horrible service, or really good service and horrible food. And me and my fiance at the time, whatever, just didn't care for it. And the job I got was shitty, and my boss was horrible, so we just moved to North Carolina. We lived in Towson and Cockeysville. That's awesome. My mom went to Towson High School. And yeah, we just lived just north of Towson. That's awesome. Socks, you sound like you're talking about Chicago there. Really? Yeah, I remember one of my first experiences when I moved to North Carolina. It was like my first grocery shop. Like in Maryland, everybody in the grocery stores are silent. You know, nobody talks to each other. I mean, not that it's chatty here, but nobody talks to each other ever. And I was standing here and I was doing my first grocery shop in North Carolina, and I'm trying to like get all of, like, you know, your staples. You literally come to an empty fridge. And so you know, I'm buying literally everything. Uh and I'm looking at the hot dogs, and I'm looking, and there's cheese, and there's bun length, and there's turkey, and there's beef, and there's this and that, and I'm like, oh, which kind of hot dogs? And I guess I was standing there for a little while, and in North Carolina, this was in North Carolina, a guy walks behind me, this older gentleman, and as he's walking by, he leans over and he goes, it's a big decision, isn't it? And I was like, yes, sir. Yes, sir, it is. And I just thought that's just like, he didn't have to stop. He didn't have to say anything, you know, but he just, you know, just being nice. So, anyways, I used to work for GMBC, and the physician's billing office was across from the state fair. Oh, wow. Yeah, that's where I used to work, across from the state fairgrounds in that shopping center. There was a Cadoba. There was a small, it was like a strip mall type thing, but there's a small animal hospital there, Timonium Animal Hospital. That's where I worked at. Uh, and then we moved down the street towards Seminary Avenue, and opened a new building. Yes, York Road. Yep, I was on York Road, right across the street from. That's amazing. And then yeah, Timonium Animal Hospital, moved down more towards Towson, right off of Seminary in York. Yep. Yeah, it is a small world. First wife was from Cockeysville. My dad's first wife was from Cockeysville. We chat here mostly to get out of the way or excuse you. Yeah, that's awesome. Some say socks can still be seen in the hot dog aisle looking around to this day. That's awesome. It's true. It's a fact. It's a fact. Yep. I was there from 2023 to 2024. May 2023, May or June 2023 to April, I believe, 2024. It was a wonderful practice. Like, I definitely would recommend it as far as pets. It just, the boss was not the best in the world. Uh, and I should burn his name. Bernie his name. We'll just do a move from Maryland to Nebraska in 2007, didn't move back till 2019. Ah, gotcha. We're just gonna wing it. Yeah, we might have not lived there for long enough, but I really like it here. People are very friendly. Bop, bop, bop. Ow, that's getting hot. Surprised you're still on. I know, right? I wanted to get done with this. Oh, wow, it's 10 o'clock. I'm trying to get done with this guy. There. Bernie. It's not perfect, but it looks all right. I heard she moved there because the grocery stores give out free food samples. They are friendly. Drive like maniacs, but friendly. Yes. Yeah, the drivers here have just recently turned maniac. Everybody here used to be, and I need to just get the rest of this off. But everybody here used to be pretty chill, and all of a sudden it's just like the past couple months even. All of a sudden, crazy pants. I mean, don't they give free food samples out everywhere? Well, now I just have to get Timber's address and mail it out. And that'll be not here? Really? I mean, it's not often. It's not, definitely not often. I go shopping so early, they're not set up. That's a good idea. I wish I could get up early. Ugh, I wish I could get up early. I would solve so many of my problems. And I can't really do much about that. Oh, you know what I could do? I put another sticker. Where's my stickers? Whimsy is asleep on the banana peel. I would never take a food sample from someone if they've been breathing on it for an hour. Ooh, yeah, that's true. I did it when I used to shop at BJ's, but I haven't seen it anyplace for years. Yeah, well, they have it at Trader Joe's a lot. I could put... It's not gonna... There you go. Is that stupid? Is that dumb to put that there? Because I got that there, but you can't really see it. Avoid screaming kids. Oh, I will do anything to avoid screaming kids. Should I just leave it like that or put the sticker on? It's not an instrument, but maybe just leave it like that. Sticker, you vote sticker? Put the sticker? Okay, 2 votes for sticker. 3 votes for sticker. Alrighty. I'm gonna do it. 4 votes for sticker. Trader Joe's is Aldi. I mean, that makes sense since they're in my town. They're right next to each other. All right. Okay, it is done. I think I like it just regular rather than painting it. I don't know. I'll have to, like he said, make up my mind. But I think it turned out pretty good. That wasn't too bad. Yay. Yay. Thanks, guys. Thanks for your help. I should put something in his hand. Not really. 3 years, 8 months, and 1 stream later. Yep. Have to go to Greensboro for Trader Joe's? Wow. You bet Jurassic. Take a picture? Alright, I'm gonna take a picture. Hold on. I got the fingerprints on the lens. Take a picture. There you go. I took a picture. I'll put it in the Discord. Alright, y'all. Wow. How long have I been streaming for? Since like 6:45? So 3 hours. Thanks, Raven! Thanks for hanging out, Raven. It's good to have you here. Ba-doop boop boop, ba-doop boop boop, boop. Ba-doop. Oh, see, when I come back to this one, the camera's too low. I need another camera. Different camera. Absolutely, Raven. It's nice to see you. Oh, it's upside down, so I better turn that upside down. Alright, yo. On that note, I am out like trout, and I have enjoyed our time together as always. And I will see you next week for sure. Thank you, friend in Cranston. Thank you, Cranston, and everybody for being here. Y'all are amazing. Even when I have to skip a couple of weeks, and I come on, you guys are still just right here. You guys are awesome. I love you with my heart. With my heart. Night, yo. Night, Wayne Wayne. Other socks, Bowen. Alright, I love you guys. Michi. And Purple. And White Wolf. And everybody. And Friend. Night, night. I'm going to try to find my... There we are. This one? Nope, not that one. It's too hot for that one. This one. This one. Love you guys. See you next week. Bye. Bye, 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 bye. Have a good week. And remember, only you can prevent forest fires. Only you. And stop, drop, and roll, Dick, roll. Okay, bye.